Well, that parable that Sandra read, a bit of a heavy parable, especially the way it ends. It's a bit scary. But basically, Jesus is saying this is serious business. We're not playing games here. This is really important. And this morning, we want to ask, what does faithful stewardship of our talents look like? What does it look like to have faithful stewardship of our talents? What it means is dreaming and planning for what could be rather than just organizing what is. Okay? It means visioning and planning for what could be rather than just organizing what is. It also means budgeting and planning to reach a vision, a goal, rather than budgeting from the bottom up. And what I mean by budgeting from the bottom up is we go to the committees and we say, so how much money do you need this year? And very little changes. We just kind of go through them instead of saying, okay, what is our vision, what is our goal, and how are we going to budget, how are we going to plan to reach that? It means asking this question, what is God doing in our midst, and how are we going to join him? That's a little different than just praying, God, please bless my plans. Yes, we would like him to bless our plans, but probably even better than that, we would like to be in tune with what his plans are and then join him. I'll give you an example. Let's just say my family was planning a holiday, a family trip to Radium Hot Springs. Any of you been there? Some of you? Okay. All the rest of you need to go. There's a cold pool and a hot pool. Radium Hot Springs. So I paint this picture of Radium Hot Springs, and everybody is just excited. Okay, let's go. We're going to Radium Hot Springs. Now, after that, now we talk about how are we going to get there? What is it going to cost to drive there? What is it going to cost in terms of food? What is it going to cost in terms of lodging? But all of that is worked out once we figure out we want to go to Radium Hot Springs. There's no point in talking about transportation and lodging and food if we don't know where we're going, or if we're going anywhere at all. That's called discussing the why, the what, and the how. And the why is so terribly important to make sure that you understand, that we understand what our why is, and then we can talk about the how. For many churches, what begins in September and ends in June is not always intentionally planned with vision in mind. In fact, the annual plan in many churches simply reflects the previous year's routine. And yes, these 2 years have kind of killed routine for us. There is a side blessing to pandemic because you actually can/have to do some things differently. You're almost forced to. Very few churches set meaningful goals for their activities or put their programs and activities through a microscope to evaluate the why. Why do they do them and what are the desired outcomes? If people come, they seem happy, we met the budget, what more could you want? Let's repeat the same next year. For most churches, vision could be summarized as perpetuating the status quo indefinitely into the future. Now, I'm obviously not talking about EFC. We're doing much better than that, but that's often kind of the paradigm. This way of doing church does not reflect a biblical way of thinking. It is devoid of any compelling vision, and it doesn't really undertake to achieve kingdom objectives. But God has a plan for his church, and there are overarching principles that should guide us as we work out the specifics of what he wants to do with us here locally in our midst. Our vision must come from our commander-in-chief, and it is he that directs and enables us to carry it out. Given our vision statement, worship God, love neighbors, make disciples, grow young, are there specific steps that we as a church can take? I've shoulder tapped a few people in our church, and we're going to continue with a bit of a panel discussion. And I was actually, I'm going to say almost amazed, but thrilled that pretty much everybody said yes. We've got a bit of a cross spectrum. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over there, and then we don't have enough mics, so you're going to have to share. Panelists, I don't necessarily need Sunday school answers. You can be as frank as you like. You don't need to speak to absolutely every question, and we'll try and get through the majority of them. But I'm going to ask you to come up, and we'll stand. You don't have to wear your mask up here because it'll be hard to talk through the mask and the mic. But Lavina, Bob, Caleb, Jen, and Robin. So if you would come up, I'm going to move over. And at the same time, I believe Diane will have the cell phone. She can, if she deems it necessary, she can slip up to one of the mics and add a comment or a question if you guys text in stuff. But let me introduce this great group here. Robin, Jen, Lavina, Bob, and Caleb. We have almost enough mics. There's one here you can step up to. And I guess, Diane, you'll have to step up to this one then. Okay, we're good to go. So here is, we're going to ask questions about these different parts of our worship, of our vision statement. What can we do at EFC to enhance our worship? Somebody want to speak to that? What can we do to enhance our worship?
I'll go first. So, being the teacher, I looked up the word enhance. What's the definition? I channeled Ernie. Okay, so in the definition I found, enhance was to increase or intensify. So then I thought about that for myself. When the question was, what can we do at EFC to enhance our worship of God? I felt like in the building, we're good. But how can we make it go beyond the building? Like, how can we make sure that when we leave here, and it's not Sunday between 9:45 and 12, that we can enhance it out there more. So that was a challenge to myself, but also as my family at EFC. So I feel for me here, we're doing good in the building. What can we do outside the building more?
Okay, perfect. Anybody else? Lavina? Just hold the mic right up.
Okay. I was thinking that actually worship is a lifestyle. It's not something that we just do when we come to church and sing worship hymns. Everything in church we do is supposed to be worship, but also the verse in Colossians 3:17 says, "Whatever you do in word or deed, do all to the glory of God, giving praise to God, the Father, to Christ and the Father." And so I think as we go out, whatever we do, at home, at school, at work, it's all supposed to be our worship to God. Like, just kind of adding to what Jen was saying. Actually, last week at our Tuesday connecting time, we were talking about emotions in worship. Is it in place to show our emotions in worship? And actually, Mo had us... we sang a song and we had to practice. And that was a good exercise for me because I had to leave off all my inhibitions and wondering what people will think of me if I lift my hands or whatever. And I thought that was one area where I could enhance my worship.
Okay. Let me ask another question. Does it make sense to see our love neighbor and make disciples as flowing out of our worship? What do you guys think of that? Is that a result? Is love neighbor, make disciples partly a result of worship? Caleb?
I think for sure it is. Just like based solely on the fact is like what was kind of already mentioned of like worship kind of flows into our lifestyle outside of church. And so it's more of a goes into the love your neighbor aspect of it, but like our worship reflects how our faith is and how strong it is and how much we like strive to live that out in our lives, and in doing that then we promote it to whoever's around us in our daily lives, our work life, our school life, whatever. And so in that aspect I think it totally does. And it also, I think, flows into our make disciples. Just in like that's, I mean, I know that was kind of like the main idea of like the church, like way back in the Bible times, of like the disciples would go around discipling others who could then be practiced enough to go and make more disciples, whatever. That was kind of like the main idea. And I mean, now it's still that. It's not, I think, focused on as much, but like it's still a main part of who we are as a church, and preparing, you know, the next generation on to be able to continue to teach whoever's coming up about God and Christianity and our faith. So,
Okay, good. Anybody else, Bob?
Okay, I was just going to say, like the verse, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. That's number one. And then it says, and love your neighbor as yourself. So you can't have one without the other. Like, if you're going to be loving God, you're going to want to love neighbor. And it's about knowing what he's done for you and then wanting to share that with others. Yeah.
Okay, Bob.
I think my thought is a little bit more tangible maybe than what some of the others are saying, but when your testimony is ahead of you, it kind of, things fall into place. I've found many times I've been in social circles, I have many different social circles, and I get asked to pray because people know that I have the faith and I carry it in my heart, and you just have to take those opportunities, because those are worship opportunities, and you can kind of share what you have through your prayer with others.
Good. Okay, one more question for Worship God. Does worshiping God in spirit and truth include a missional component?
For sure. It has to. I think that, but to pull that off is very difficult for some people. I'm an introvert by nature, and for me to be outgoing and forward, let's say, is hard. For some people it flows more naturally, like for you, Ernie. I watch you and I'm jealous. But for me to push myself into that is very difficult.
And the marvelous thing is that we don't need to be carbon copies of each other, because, wow, it would be just terrible if everybody was exactly the same. We bring different gifts to the table and we approach it differently. I probably have a neighbor that would do better with your approach than with mine, right? Anyone else want to speak to that?
There's the verse, it says, like, do not merely listen to the word, do what it says. And the same with the story of the foundation upon the rock and the foundation upon the sand. It's like, we can hear it, but then are we being obedient to what it's saying? And so in the same way, we can, in our hearts, we can maybe believe something, but if we're going to act upon it and in truth, we need to also do that as well. And so that's why the whole missional component comes in again, of like, if we actually believe this, we're going to go out and we're going to serve, because we're going to walk in step with the Spirit and we're going to do what he's instructing us to do. And we'll see that in the Word. So,
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to love neighbors. And Dwayne's going to throw up some pictures. You can see that's our church. The question is, who are our neighbors at EFC?
Well, I think the first thought I had was neighbors around our church. That was
Lavina.
maybe our first mission. But then I also thought that EFC members or people attending are scattered all over town and in the surrounding areas, and we all have neighbors there. And so whether it's the neighbors at church, whether it's our neighbors at home, whether it's person next to us in our work or in school, they are all neighbors in some way or other. And according to the story of the Good Samaritan, a neighbor is somebody who you are able to help, a needy person who you are able to help. And so that is another aspect of who is my neighbor.
Okay. Okay.
For me, I think I have a bit of a more specific example that's, I think, not like hardly anybody here can relate to, but some neighbors that I could have would be when I go to play basketball at the court over there. And obviously it's like in clear view of our church here, but what comes to mind here is when we went over during the community barbecue to take pictures there for the posters or whatever that we're planning on hanging up, and we were sitting there by the court, and I think Braden was getting some shots of like some guys who were there playing were just in the background or whatever, but like for me, like I recognized pretty much everybody that was there who was playing, who over the summer I was there almost on a weekly basis with my buddies or whatever and playing, but like I know like not many people can relate to that, but like it's not like a work or like school kind of aspect. It's just like, and it doesn't have to be like just our neighbors who are from that neighborhood back there, like because guys come from all over to play at the courts or whatever. But like that's just an example of, I think, for me, of like who my neighbors could be apart from like just like my daily life or whatever. So
Caleb, we should probably change that. Your job is your fob. It's still accurate, but we should say your job is your fob, your social network is your fob, your sports activities is your fob, your neighborhood where you live is your fob. The reason I threw up these pictures here, we've got 6 big apartment buildings coming up just west of us, and I'm going to say, from my perspective, that I think that there are churches in town that would kill to be in our location. And when I look at the parable of the talents, I wonder what God is bringing us, what God is doing, and what opportunities that presents for being salt and light and loving our neighbor. I think we'll need to think about that. And yes, we started with a basketball hoop on our property, and then we went to the city and asked them to put up that basketball court, and I've walked by and seen it. Usually there's 15 guys out there playing. It's something the neighborhood gets that wasn't there before. Anyone else want to speak to that? Who are our neighbors? Maybe you've covered it. Let's move on to the next question. And I know these are probably leading questions. I recognize that. I'll admit to priming the pump, if you will. Is the strength of our love for neighbor related to our love for God?
So I believe it directly is. I never started attending church until junior high, I guess, probably, because my family just didn't go to church, didn't really believe in anything past what's here. And so I don't know, it's hard to say, but I don't know if my desire and love for my neighbors would be there if I didn't have a relationship with God. Like, I don't know if it would be there. It might be there a little bit, but I don't know if it to the full extent or what my goal would be. I don't know if it would be the same if I didn't have a relationship with God now. But, it's hard to compare. I'm in my 40s now. I was only like 13 then. Life changes, right? But I don't think my desire to get to know my neighbors and love my neighbors would be there if I didn't have a relationship with God.
Okay.
I'm just going to read Joel's answer. He said, we are commanded to love God with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind, and second and equally to love our neighbor as ourselves. If we don't love our neighbor as much as we love ourselves, is this not paramount to disobeying God? Thus, can we claim to love God if we do not obey him? This is not a request. This is a commandment. It shouldn't be something that we try to negotiate with God on. We just need to do it as followers of Christ.
Okay. Another question. What are some practical ideas for how we as a church can love our neighbors?
Well, for one thing, I think this last week, when the youth picked up groceries to give to needy people, that was loving their neighbors. Some other practical ways might be visiting a lonely person, or offering to come and fix something for somebody, like a widower. We sometimes need somebody for little fix-it jobs, other little things like that. I know that's a bit personal, but I was going to get a bit personal here.
Good, good. Anyone else?
Comment here from the phone. There has been a lot of emphasis on loving our neighbors. We are challenged to do this with those we have personal contact. What is our responsibility to those we don't have personal contact, i.e. displaced people, refugees, abandoned children, etc.?
Yeah, and I know that our church has, in the past, historically, we've sponsored families, I believe. We've also had services to help immigrants with paperwork or things that they needed to do. So we've had some of those kinds of things. Informally, we've also, some of us have been involved with, maybe a single parent in our congregation that needs help or different things like that. So I think, I don't think it's only those we have a relationship with. The house that had a fire down the street here, where the two families renting, we didn't know them. And we raised, I believe it was $600 to give to the families because they lost their possessions. I don't know that I don't know that it's a viable excuse to say you have to know somebody. Somebody else want to speak to that question?
I think a big one too that kind of gets overlooked sometimes, but is also our ministry to Rest Haven here, just like right across the street from us. And I don't know exactly the details of how often that's getting done these days with COVID and everything, but how we used to and go sing and have a small service for anybody who would come and listen there. And I think it's kind of in part what Levina said too about just people who are lonely. And I think, that's kind of the primary aspect or idea of what lonely people would be, of just the older folks there who or may not necessarily have a family to come and visit or friends or anything like that. So, yeah.
Okay.
I'm a hockey coach. That's not me, obviously. And this seems to be all directly tied into with what I preach there. You got to buy in. If you don't buy in to this idea, then it's all just talk.
Okay. So, in other words, if I'm understanding the comment, a coach for a sports team, anything that's team sport related, you have a system and the members have to buy into it, and they work and they win or lose together. It's not an individual thing. Everybody contributes, but they all have the same agenda and purpose in mind. My last question in this area: how can we leverage our resources, our people, our gifts, our building, our finances to tangibly love our neighbors? If you want to contribute some responses to that question, that's a question we're going to have to keep asking ourselves. But any thoughts about that? How do we leverage the resources God has given us? And our location is actually a resource. And Caleb, you've actually referred to that. We have the Rest Haven right across the intersection from us. So that actually is something important. How do we leverage our resources?
If every person here has about 10 people or so that they're connecting with, they're interacting with in their workplaces, their family, and their friends, and we see that as an opportunity to love and to connect, to love our neighbors, then we ourselves are being motivated in our own lives to share that love with others. And so to see that as a mission of the people we're interacting with as a way to love them, and then each one of us is effective in that. And even then having the body here that's supporting us, that when we come on a Sunday, we can, hey, pray for me in this. I had this interaction with this person, and I'm really struggling with ministering to them because it's hard. It's challenging to do that with the people in your spheres. But having that support of the body also just like helps you to love your neighbor if you see your mission with the people around you, and then also the support from the church. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Watching the time a bit. Make disciples. How do you think we can be intentional about discipleship at EFC? How do we develop a culture of discipleship? Good question, eh?
Well, one thing might be to start at home within our families, to discipling our kids, our grandkids, and everything, and then go on to neighbors and other friends. We disciple wherever we can disciple wherever we are. We don't have to. Well, this already goes into the next question, I guess, but not necessarily be in a formal situation.
I grappled with this question, and I realized that probably the place to start is with authenticity. In other words, I cannot say to my kids or to anybody else, do what I say, not what I do. It doesn't work. So the starting place for being a model, an example, is authenticity. And so I have to then work to be real and to be authentic. And what is a disciple? It's a Christ follower. But how do we then engage? How do we engage each other in this growing process? Here's a follow-up question. Should it be a formal program, informal, or both?
I said both until it becomes like embedded in our everyday. Then it becomes sort of a natural thing, right? But I think we have to be intentional until it becomes almost involuntary, sort of like something that I don't want to say don't think about because we still want to think about it, but we really have to set ourselves a goal to do this so that it can happen until it becomes more natural and more embedded in everything we do. Kind of like Lavina said, like wherever we are, right? Started with our own kids or grandkids and spread out until it becomes embedded in everything. It has to be both formal and informal.
You can say, I want to pray together with people more. You can say that all you want, but if you're not actually doing it, you're not going to be working towards it. You're not going to be like fulfilling your desires. And so in the same way, yeah, like what you're saying is naturally flowing. Like it's easy for us to maybe just talk about the weather after the service, but it requires vulnerability to say to someone, hey, I sinned this last week. I messed up. Can you pray for me? Or, that's discipleship right there, right? So seeing that even of after the service or things like that. But that requires, vulnerability, and it's tough. So that's why it'll take a bit of a push, but to see that there's beauty in that and, like, the Lord is like, yes, it's awesome. You guys are, like, connecting, so.
Yeah, being intentional, I think is, like, kind of the main point that's getting pushed across here, but, like, yeah, being authentic in how you're doing things, but like, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're going to be authentic if you're only going to do it once every however much time you have in between. Like, you have to be intentional, to make that an important part of your life to be able to grow and then, be able to reach out to other people too. So,
I'm going to throw in a hockey analogy one more time. I used to, I haven't done it for a while, but I used to go, at the beginning of the year when they just put the ice in and look at the training camp or the recruiting camp for the Huskies or for the Pistons or whatever. And I'd often think to myself, wow, are we in trouble this year? It would just look awful. But then they get to the playoffs and this well-oiled machine is amazing. What happened? Well, it's called coaches that are intentional about figuring out what are the drills we need to work on, what are the areas we need to work on so that this team gets from here to here. This is a hockey practice isn't just filling 35 or 40 minutes or an hour. It's actually intentional. So if I'm a Sunday school teacher and I have a class of 7 12-year-old boys, I need to ask myself, what does a 12-year-old boy look like? And where do I want him to be a year from now in terms of mental, emotional, spiritual growth? In other words, I have to have some desired outcomes. I'm not just filling in time here. And I think, to me, that's really part of discipleship, figuring out what are the desired outcomes? How do we want to help each other grow? How do we do that? Okay, last one, grow young. Can you suggest some practical ways that we can involve our seniors in engaging our youth at EFC, and that we can build intergenerational relationships?
This was an easy question for me,
Okay.
because I'll tell you why. My girls have actually literally grown up in this church. Sorry. And they have been blessed by so many different people along the way that continue. Doesn't matter if Sunday school's done. It doesn't matter if youth is finished. It doesn't matter when children's church was done. They still have people that come and talk to them and talk with them instead of talking at them. They actually come to my girls and want to have meaningful conversations with them. They don't even need me. Like, they're not coming to see me, they're coming to talk to them, which is so awesome. And this is like, I see so many of you ladies that have done this for my girls for years, from when they were like running around the church, like all the way up until now. And that has been an amazing blessing for Dwayne and myself, because it takes a village. It really does. And that has been so amazing to see so often that has happened. And I don't even know if you know the importance of those conversations. So thank you for doing that, because they have been genuine. They have been because you care about them. And you don't have to. That's the thing, you do it because you want to. And that is something so special. You will stand there and listen to my girls talk about all their stuff and ask questions and just care about them. And you may not even know the impact that you have had on them in their 16 and almost 14 years. And it is incredible. And I thank you for that. And it's something that I want to strive to do as well for the next generation of rugrats that are running around church. Like, it is an awesome thing and a huge blessing. And so I really, really thank you for that. So please don't ever stop, because we still need your wisdom and your love for our kids, no matter what age they are.
Another practical way, I think, that we could engage seniors and youth. Most seniors have stories to tell that are waiting to be told. And I heard of one church who did that by inviting the youth and seniors together, and they would, the youth would get questions they could ask the seniors, and that way get a dialogue going between the youth and the seniors, and that had worked out very well. I think everybody had enjoyed that. Or the seniors could invite the youth for an evening of table games, or vice versa. I think a lot of seniors would still be very happy to play table games. Might not be the style that the youth play, but I think we could work something out.
Levina just had to go and steal my answer there, but when I was doing my year at Southland, doing SOM, which was my first year out of high school, then we had this one day of class where we had like hour, 2 hour chunk of time where we had like a bunch of, all the seniors come in from Southland Church, and we just all sat at different tables or whatever, just like one or two of the older seniors and like 3 or 4 of us younger adults, and just talked, and the seniors just talked about their younger lives and their faith and growing up and like whatever it was, and it was fascinating, believe it or not, like that, like we weren't bored of that, but like that it was like a good kind of bonding time to like get to know them, and like it know what it was like to grow up not in this generation that's like so like future focused already, but like just like how they were like live in the moment and everything they did, and that was awesome to be able to get to do that. And I've noticed also too, like more of a personal example, but like I don't know how much my mom cared about basketball before I came along, but I reckon it wasn't a lot. But nowadays, like the Raptors are playing or whatever, and I'm watching the game, and she'll be like totally interested in what's going on and like who's all playing and who they're playing against and how they're doing in the year. And like I don't think she would have ever cared about basketball like that before, but just kind of a personal example of growing young in that sense. And I think just the influence, if you put enough intentional time into it, how much of a difference it can make. So
Okay. I want to go ahead, Bob. Yep.
I have one more little
Yep.
one. This is just from the other side.
Yep.
I'm going to be 66 in less than a week. I'm one of the old people. I would have never thought that I was going to get there, but whatever. To appease the old, maybe an occasional hymn. Once a Sunday, maybe. It would make some of us older people, it would give us joy.
Diane and I were talking about maybe one Sunday we do a hymn Sunday and have the sermon discussing the theology behind the different hymns.
Wow, that'd be crazy.
But we'll plan that for the future. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, panelists. I think our time is pretty much run out. Thank you so much for being willing to engage with us this morning. We'll let you have a seat. One parting question for us this morning as the praise and worship band comes up. If we knew we couldn't fail with God's help, this is what we would attempt to do going forward. If we knew we couldn't fail with God's help, this is what we would attempt to do going forward. Let's dream big dreams. Let's ask God to help us to understand what He wants to do in our midst, and then let's join Him. It might mean some sacrifice. It certainly will mean that we take Matthew 25 seriously, and we look at what He has entrusted to us, and we say, Lord, here it is. We want to be faithful. Let's pray and then praise band. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time of discussion this morning and for the many ideas that we heard. I pray that you would continue to impress on our hearts what your special plan is for us individually and as a church family. Thank you for the opportunities that you've given us, both individually and also as a family. And I pray that as we seek to be faithful to what you've entrusted to us, give us the courage, the strength, the wisdom by your Holy Spirit to move forward in faith. Thank you, and we pray these things in Jesus' precious name and for his sake. Amen.